Must have been cold there in my shadow to never have sunlight on your face. You were content to let me shine, that's your way. You always walked a step behind. So I was the one with all the glory. You were the one with all the strength. A beautiful face without a name for so long. A beautiful smile to hide the pain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? Everything I wish I could be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. It might have appeared to go unnoticed, but I've got it all here in my heart. I want you to know I know the truth. Of course I know it. I would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that you're my hero? Everything I wish I could be. I could fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Did I ever tell you you're my hero? You're everything, everything I wish I could be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. 'Cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Fly away. You let me fly so high. Beneath my wings, fly, fly, fly so high I can almost touch the sky. Thank you, thank God for you, the wind beneath my wings. Would you know my name if I saw you in heaven? Would it be the same if I saw you in heaven? strong and carry on, 'cause I know I don't belong here in heaven. Would you hold my hand if I saw you in heaven? Would you help me stand if I saw you in heaven? I'll find my way through night and day, 'cause I know I just can't stay here in heaven. Would you know my name if I saw you in heaven? Would it be the same if I saw you in heaven? I must be strong and carry on, for I know I don't belong here in heaven. Time can bring you down, time can bend your knees, time can break your heart, babe, you beg and please, beg and please. Beyond the door, be no more, 'cause I know there'll be no more tears in heaven. Would you know my name if I saw you in heaven? Would you feel the same if I saw you in heaven? I must be strong and carry on, 'cause I know I don't belong here in heaven.
Thank you, Jenny. Beautiful. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this celebration of life for Dawn, a.k.a. Sweetie, and Jim, a.k.a. Little Fat Man, Carstens. Those were Jim's names for Dawn and for himself. My name is Mark Vikstrom. I was one of Dawn's students and Stacy's classmate at Palisade High School. On behalf of Stacy, Chris, and all the family, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for celebrating in this way, Jim and Dawn. All they were to each other, all they meant to you, and to so many others. And you know what? This is a celebration because sometimes we call these events memorial services, funerals, but this is not about death. This one is about life. That's what our emphasis is today. And not only on the earthly lives of Jim and Dawn, although no one can know for sure, some of us believe and through faith are convicted that there's more to it than what meets the eye. And if that's so, Jim and Dawn have passed from this life to more life, something that they're now glimpsing for the first time. Whatever the case, we are celebrating today, and when Stacy, Chris, and I met to plan this celebration, I asked them, what did they want you to know? How did they want this all to look and to feel? Here's some of what they talked about. First, tell them about family and children. Jim and Dawn loved their family, especially all the grandkids and great-grandkids. And in fact, Stacy says her mom never met a child she didn't like. Dawn migrated to children wherever she went. Stacy tells a story of one time when she and Dawn were in Guatemala, and Dawn met a little girl out in the town square, and Stacy said Mom couldn't speak a lick of Spanish, but she was over there trying to be all buddy-buddy with that little girl she didn't even know. Same thing when Chris and Dawn visited Ecuador. Local women would leave their kids, I'm told, in a covered plaza there during the day while they worked. And Dawn would be over with the babies and with the kids, and she loved them all. She had a way with them. But Jim, maybe not so much. As this next story demonstrates, this one I call Outhouses and F-Bombs. Stacy and Chris recalled the first time that they heard their dad use the F word. Here's the scene. It was back in the late 60s at the family's cabin in Meeker, or more precisely, it was at the cabin's outhouse in Meeker. Jim was installing a new tank or vault or chamber for the, and as Stacy tells it, Jim overdid it just a little bit. After he finished installing the tank, he decided to nail shingles to and decorate not only the outside of the outhouse, but the inside as well. Because, who doesn't like a well-appointed outhouse? And as he hammered, a single shingle fell into the tank, which he knew would plug up the works later when he came to pump out the you-know-what. And so here's where it gets good, and this is why I say Jim might not have had the same touch with kids that his wife did. Jim decides it's going to be a good idea if I'm going to lower my sweetest, dearest, littlest girl, Krista, down into this hole to fetch the shingle. I'm not sure if he was planning to hold her by the ankles or lower her by rope, but even as a child, Chris was pretty sharp. Not wanting to risk turning her pretty blonde hair brunette, she took off running, and she promptly left the scene of this accident in the making. And that's when Jim lets fly with an F-bomb. Grabbing the slats off the outhouse seat, ripped them clean off. So much for the interior outhouse design, and Chris has run away, but ever game for a challenge, Stacy steps up, and she wants to volunteer her services. Dad, I'll do it, just no more F-bombs. Jim wasn't having it, and as far as I know, that shingle is still there. The third thing they wanted you to know about sports and athletes who played those sports. Both Jim and Dawn loved sports, loved the athletes. And so I think it's fitting that Dawn passed on February 2nd, which in 2020 was Super Bowl Sunday. And fitting too that even in his grief, Jim was at a game the next week. In fact, they always went to games, Mesa and Palisade especially. Even after they no longer knew any players, they never missed the Mesa women's basketball and volleyball games. And of course, they were both avid supporters of all the teams that Chris coached in Paonia. The kids there called Dawn and Jim Grams and Poppy, and they even had a banner printed, I'm told, with their nicknames that was hung up at the games. Jim and Dawn loved those kids so much that Dawn would put together special little bags full of things for the athletes. like a penny for luck, an eraser for mistakes, a key for success. Doesn't that sound like her? And she would come up with little motivational sayings to help the team along. But Dawn never wanted the kids to know that she was behind any of it. So if any of you Paonia players from back in the day are here, now you know. It was she. And Jim and Dawn were both athletes themselves, Jim especially. He was super competitive. He was strong. He was fast. He was quick. And there's a picture over there that testifies to that, I think. But he wasn't always big on technique, so his daughters say. For example, Jim and Dawn played in a volleyball league at the Palisade Park, where Stacy said it was always just about getting the ball over the net, no technique required. And anybody who in 8th grade played volleyball with me knows that I learned that lesson really well. But when it came to racquetball, Jim had technique to spare. Stacy says that at one time he was a ranked player here in Colorado. When he played all the time at Mesa, if he played with somebody who couldn't play well, Stacy said, he'd just play left-handed and still spank him. And I'm told Jim probably brought pickleball to the Grand Valley. And last night walking around town, I saw some pickleball courts over there by the old football field. So I guess he gets some credit for that. He installed a pickleball court behind their house. And I wonder if that's also where all those broken rackets that I heard that he busted are stashed. The fourth thing they want you to know about, lastly, travel and adventure. This one came as a bit of a surprise to some of us, given that Jim and Dawn were famous for their poor senses of direction. So poor, in fact, that over the years, Stacy said they had to have numerous police escorts to help them find their hotels when they were at out-of-town games. I know, who would have thought that these smart, capable, educated people could not themselves read a road map? But it's true. I'm told that they would drive all over Colorado to watch games and get lost time and time again, Stacy said. Dad had no sense of direction, and Mom was an even worse navigator. Even after cell phones and GPS systems, they still got lost because Dad was scared to death of technology, Stacy says, and he'd be a nervous wreck. I think I can picture that. But she said, Mom, she loved every minute of it all because it was an adventure. And the world opened up to her and to her girls both. Jim wasn't so into traveling like she was internationally, but there are lots of stories. I don't know if you saw before you came in and started looking at the pictures, but there's one from a cruise, I think, when Stacy and Dawn were going through the Panama Canal. And Dawn's kitted out with a stick-on mustache, stick-on eyebrows, sombrero, and a serape. And she called herself Rico Suave all night, apparently. Wore that outfit in public all evening, much to the astonishment of the other guests on the ship, especially in the tight quarters of a ship's elevator. But then there was a girls' trip to San Francisco a few years ago, and I was out there, and I got a text from Stacy, and here Stacy and Chris and Dawn are in the back seat of the car just whipping it up and having a great time. And, Dawn loved traveling so much, she even was up for trips where she wasn't even invited. Stacy said one time she went to the Czech Republic, and Dawn asked, can I go along? Stacy said, as only Stacy could say, no. And daunted, Dawn said, that's okay. That's what I like about you. I love that you don't have a problem telling me no. So, family and kids, outhouses and F-bombs, sports and travel and adventure. Just a little bit of Jim and Dawn, who they were, who and what they loved, and how they lived. But of course, it's impossible to accurately sum up the essence of any person in words. But this little story might help. As most of you probably know, Dawn suffered a brain trauma in 1983, and she lived in a rehab center for a long time. She had to learn to live left-handed, and that changed everything for her and for Jim. After that, Jim cared for her, which she didn't much like being dependent in this way. She wanted to be independent, and it totally changed their relationship in ways large and small. But here's who they were. Jim would make her morning tea, count out her morning pills, put toothpaste on her toothbrush every night, those kinds of things for the rest of her life. Through it all, they stayed in love and they showed it. Stacy and Chris said they found little love notes all over the house, behind each other's bathroom mirrors, in the drawers, in the calendar, even stuck in the furniture. And more than anything, I think perhaps this speaks to who Jim and Dawn really were. They were people in love. Stacy and Chris found a list of scriptures that Dawn kept, and she sent that to me, and I went down the line, and at the top was, along with the Lord's Prayer, 1 Corinthians 13:4, which is the famous love is patient, love is kind scripture. And it goes on, it does not envy, it doesn't boast, it's not proud. That's who I think Jim and Dawn were. Today, you're going to have an opportunity to reflect on who they were through your eyes, to share your own memories of these remarkable, loving people. You know, Dawn graced this earth with her presence for 84 years and Jim for 88 years. But it's often said, and I think it's right, it's not so much the years in your life that count as it is the life in your years. And by this measure, I think everybody would agree they lived fully and well. This afternoon, we're going to hear in eulogies, stories, and remembrances just how much life and living these two packed into their years. The famous storyteller and humorist Garrison Keillor of Prairie Home Companion fame famously quipped, "You know, they say such nice things about people at events like this. It makes me sad to realize I'm going to miss my own." Well, Jim and Dawn, we know you're here with us in spirit, and so we invite you and everyone present today to join in this retrospective, a celebration of two lives intertwined, inseparable, and very well lived. Stacy and Krista, would you come up, please? So you've probably been to weddings, and I've done plenty, where we used unity candles, right? And we bring two candles together and we light a pillar candle to symbolize the way in which two lives are joined. And I thought, as I was thinking through this service today, go ahead, what a wonderful representation of the love of Jim and Dawn Carstens, two people whose lights still burn as one, even in eternity. Thank you, guys. The obituaries. Mary Dawn, quote, Dawn Carstens, passed away in St. Mary's Hospital in Grand Junction, Colorado on February 2nd, 2020, after suffering a head injury caused by a fall. She was surrounded by family at the time of her death. Dawn was born on February 2nd, 1936, to Walter V. Slack and Lois Ranchler Slack in Meeker, Colorado, where she later attended both primary and secondary schools. Dawn earned her bachelor's degree in physical education at Western State in Gunnison, and later continued her education by completing a master's in education at Colorado State University. Her love of learning continued throughout her life as she completed many continuing education programs and obtained her counseling certification in the later stages of her career. Dawn was a beloved teacher and counselor to thousands of junior high and high school students over the course of her career. Many of us are here today. As an advocate for Title IX and women's athletics, Dawn was instrumental in the introduction of women's high school sports in Mesa County, and she coached nearly every women's sport at Palisade High School. Even after her retirement, she continued to attend and support women's athletic events. She and Jim were often seen across Colorado at women's volleyball and basketball games, from middle and high school gyms to collegiate competitions at Colorado Mesa University. Over the last 2.5 decades, she and her husband, fondly known as Grams and Poppy by the student athletes of both Hotchkiss and Paonia, often made appearances in support of the athletic programs of the North Fork Valley. After Dawn's educational career ended, she embraced her new love, gardening. Studying through Colorado State University, Dawn completed a master's gardening certificate and later became a member of the Desert Vista Garden Club. Her passion was heirloom roses, and aren't these a beautiful representation of the flowers she loved? But she also thoroughly loved bird watching, and with her sweetie's help, she always kept her bird feeders full. Dawn spent many hours sitting in her tree swing or peering out her kitchen watching birds. In her spare time, she enjoyed playing bridge and bunco with her friends, pulling weeds and pruning roses in her garden, and participating in the CD chapter of PEO and other service organizations. Throughout her life, Dawn faced many physical challenges. Everyone who knew her would agree that she was the toughest person they had ever known. And in spite of the obstacles Dawn faced, she still liked to keep her mind sharp. And she thought up all sorts of good mental challenges to do that. One such challenge was to memorize the names of the presidents of the United States, and in true Dawn fashion, to add a competitive aspect to the task, she memorized the names in order of the presidents. I bet she could do it backwards, too. Dawn dearly loved all the children in her family, but her grandkids and great-grandkids were particularly special to her. She was famous for yarn spinning, and the kids loved listening to her stories. She could recite The Night Before Christmas from memory. Many a Christmas Eve would find Grams surrounded by her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, their innocent eyes shining in anticipation of her story, and the domestic scene only further intensified by the magic of her beautiful collection of Christmas trees, lovingly and painstakingly decorated and placed around the house. Dawn was predeceased by her parents, an older brother, 2 younger sisters, and a great-grandson. She is survived by all of you. On November 3rd, 2020, James Conrad Carstens left this world to be with his sweetie. Jim was born June 9th, 1932, to Alex Carstens and Nona Rector Carstens in Rifle, Colorado, and later his family moved to Meeker, where he attended primary and secondary schools and graduated from Rio Blanco County High School, today Meeker High School, in 1950. He then joined the United States Navy in January of 1952, and he attended basic training in San Diego, California. When Jim completed his training, he was stationed aboard the USS George destroyer escort. In the summer of 1952, though, he was sent to Class A Yeoman School, where he graduated at the top of his class. One of his favorite assignments during his military service was being more suitably stationed for ground duty in Kodiak, Alaska, after perpetual bouts of seasickness. During his tour of duty, Jim received the Korean Service Medal, the United Nations Service Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, and a Good Conduct Medal as he was honorably discharged in November 1955. Upon his discharge, he moved to Rangeley, Colorado, where he began dating the love of his life, his sweetie, Mary Dawn Slack. The 2 lovebirds were married on June 16, 1957 in Meeker. Jim and his bride moved to Grand Junction, where they both enrolled in courses at Mesa College. After Jim completed his associate's degree, the couple moved then to Gunnison, where they were both resident assistants at Western State College, and Jim obtained there his Master of Art in 1961 from Western. Jim subsequently took his first teaching assignment in El Centro, California, but later returned to Grand Junction and was hired at Mesa College as an instructor in the business department. He then moved his family to Fort Collins, where he earned his Doctor of Philosophy from Colorado State University, and again returned to Mesa College as a professor. Jim was later hired as the dean of the business school and was very proud of the fact that he was instrumental in bringing the first master's program to Mesa. Having the desire to raise their family in a smaller community, Jim and Don purchased and remodeled a historical home in Palisade in 1971 and moved the family in 1972. Jim became a weekend farmer when he bought a peach orchard, but when his daughters didn't build houses and raise their kids on that land, he sold the orchard and dedicated his life to taking care of Sweetie. They remained in Palisade until the times of their death. Jim lived an active life filled with outdoor adventures. He was a master fly fisherman. He enjoyed hunting. He loved driving fast in cars and on snow machines, and he was flat out crazy on motorcycles. He loved to scooter poop, don't know what that is, on the desert with his Mesa College buddies and daughters. And if you look closely at the motorcycle trails on the north side of I-70, you might still see remnants of his numerous motorcycle escapades. With Jim, when Jim could no longer safely participate in his outdoor activities, he switched to being a spectator in indoor sporting events. Jim and Don were often seen across Colorado at women's volleyball and basketball games, from middle and high school gyms to collegiate competitions at Colorado Mesa University. Jim had many hobbies, including chess, cribbage, and poker with the boys. He hosted numerous crazy snooker and poker parties in the basement of the house, and he thoroughly loved beating everyone in everything. No matter the sport or activity, Jim was always the competitor in everything he did, and if he couldn't win by following the rules, he was known to cheat, and he did it very well. That's what it says. Also, if he failed to win, he often had temper tantrums, and he would upset the board, throw his racket, or tear up the deck of cards, to the great humor of his family. Learning to navigate technology and playing games on his phone also created many frustrations for Jim, and the family often joked with him about him beating his phone. He dearly loved hunting and fishing with family and friends and spending time at both his Ute Creek cabin and his Arrowhead cabin. During his tenure at Mesa College, he stayed fit and ready for his outdoor frivolities by playing racquetball every day at lunch. After his retirement, Jim built a pickleball court at his home, and he participated in family tournaments, and when he could no longer play, he became the line judge, where he could then control the game and enjoy a toddy. Okay. Little Fat Man Carstens was forever the infamous jokester, and no matter the situation, he always had a joke to share or a witty comeback. He often entertained his grandkids by rolling out his false teeth or asking if they wanted to see where the Indian had shot him. Although his ornery attitude was ever present, his soft heart was illuminated by his relationship with his dogs. He truly cherished his fur children and made the regular stops for dog treats at the Edward Jones office on his daily walk. Jim experienced many special friendships over the course of life. The Ridings family in Meeker, who provided him with a home during his youth. They were always dear to his heart. He maintained his jokester friendships with all of his Mesa College buddies even after his retirement. Jim and Don were also very thankful for the friendships they experienced and for the assistance they received from their dear Palisade friends, who are too many to list, and many of you are right here in this room today. Jim's coffee club became increasingly important over the past couple of years and provided Jim with tremendous emotional support over the last 9 months. After Don's passing, Jim developed a very special bond with Shelley Clark, who filled in as his daily cribbage buddy and dear confidant. And between her and Fritzy, he had a reason to get up in the morning and something to look forward to every day. Jim is predeceased by his sweetie, Dawn, by his parents, his 2 older brothers, Clayton and Marvin Carstens, his younger brother, Spark Carstens, and a great-grandson. And he is survived by all of you. It's a little bit about the people we're here to celebrate, and now we're going to hear from their families. Stacy?
Chase to get up here. Okay. Wow, it's been a while. We've been planning this for a while now. When it first started, it was a celebration for Mom. And it was going to start with a potluck party because we knew Mom would love that. We had plans to start the celebration at the Palisade High School, as that would have been the most fitting location to celebrate Mom's life. That event would have included a horse-drawn ride with Dennis Clark at the reins, and Mom and Dad, and from Mom and Dad, and then Mom and Dad's house to the school, and then from the school to Dennis and Stacy's venue, where we are today. Most of this would have been for Dad's benefit, but as fate would have it, we're here celebrating the lives of both Mom and Dad. All things happen for a reason. One of Dad's favorite memories was of his, one of his favorite stories was of his earliest memories of Mom. As children, they lived right across the street from one another. And apparently, Grandpa Slack, when he got home, every once in a while, he brought his kids treats. And Dad can remember when Grandpa Slack pulled up, Mom saying, "Dot my dum, Daddy, dot my dum." So translated, that means, "Got my gum, Daddy, got my gum." She must have been missing a few teeth at the time. So the Palisade house, as Mark mentioned, in 1971, Mom and Dad decided it was time to move to Palisade. Mom loved the old house and the old houses in Palisade, and they both felt that smaller schools would be better for their girls. I'm not sure about that, but anyway.
More dangerous.
Anyway, we won't go into that. Mom was so excited about buying their home on First Street, and Dad could only see dollar signs in remodeling and home repairs. Mom went about filling their home with beautiful antiques, and Dad went about figuring out how to pay for it all. They both managed beautifully. Later in life, when Mom couldn't hear him, Dad would say how nice that house really was. So, one good thing about moving to Palisade is we made some fabulous friends. Palisade turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to us. Mom started teaching and coaching at the Palisade Senior High School. Dad had the opportunity to become a peach farmer and get a wonderful tax write-off. Dad wasn't a very good farmer, and some of you probably already know that. But we made some really good friends, and we're still friends with those people today. Our winter weekends were spent at Powderhorn, skiing with the Clarks and the Milligan kids, and trying to keep up with the Hayes boys. To this day, I can't eat tomato soup or Ritz crackers with salami and cheese without thinking of Dennis and Kip. When we went skiing, we always had lunch with them up at Powderhorn. Mom and Dad were lucky enough to have such good friends to help them out as they aged and needed a little help around the place. Without those friends like Dennis and Stacy Clark, Danny, D.T. Taylor, Buck Bracken, Shelley and Jeff Clark, Richard Rupp. Richard, are you here? You have earned your wings. Dave Hull and Sandy Cooper, thank you. I know I've missed many additional helping friends, but you all know who you are. Thank you so very much. A good friend once asked me, how did your parents raise you girls? My answer was, no differently than had we been boys. It might have been a little exaggerating, but Chris and I were raised to believe that we could do anything and accomplish anything we put our minds to. We were given quite a bit of freedom to be kids. I once asked Mom how she could just let me go out the door in the morning and ride my horse all day and never see me until dinner time. And she said, "Oh, I was out there in those hills watching you. You just didn't see me." We still think that's a fib. I don't think so. Dad was the one who showed a bit more compassion when we were injured. Mom's go-to answer was always, "It's a long way from your heart. You'll be fine." Or, "No blood, no sympathy." So there were no sissy girls at the Carstens house. These are the things that we learned from Dad. Integrity, ethics, hard work, but hard work should always be rewarded with either an ice cream sandwich or a dip in the canal. A disregard for performance boundaries. Our dad was a crappy student in high school. He got below C's, barely graduated, but when he put his mind to it and went to college, he was a straight A student and he worked his butt off. So, kudos to Dad. We learned to have a quest for fun and to play hard. If you borrow something, always return it in a better condition than what you found it. And an appreciation for home. Things that we learned from Mom. Patience. Oh crap, where's that box? Oh. Hold on.
It was right here.
Dang, I'm missing a prop. Can you find it? Okay. All right, starting over. Things we learned from Mom. Patience, understanding, empathy and sympathy. A disregard for what others think of us. Patience, and some might have even called her stubborn. Independence, and a quest for adventure and new experiences. She was game for anything. Things that they loved. Dad loved to fish, hunt, ride motorcycles and snowmobiles, fast. He loved to race his cars, even when the person next to him didn't know they were racing. Anyone who tried to pass Dad on the highway was obviously asking for a race. Even later in life, when he was the leader in sledding trips, up hills and around trees, because he was the only crazy one in the bunch. His motto was, "When in doubt, full throttle." Mom took a kinder, gentler path. She loved to garden and spend time with her friends. She was a very strong advocate for girls' sports and equal rights. When we moved to Palisade, the girls' students had to take home ec all year, and the boys got to take shop. After Mom became a teacher at the high school, the boys got to take home ec half of the year, and the girls got to take shop half of the year. She was also instrumental in getting girls' sports to the high schools in western Colorado. They both loved to watch sports of all kinds. The Wide World of Sports was on our TV every Sunday, and the whole family would lie down on the floor and watch for hours. And when the Olympics came, that was awesome. They were glued to the TV the whole time, and it's a genetic thing. Later in life, after Mom no longer was able to work, she was determined to keep her mind and body fit, as Mark mentioned. Dad rigged her snowmobile so that she could ride one-handed. That was pretty freaking scary. It was brakes, throttle, and what else?
Brakes, throttle. On one hand,
and trying to steer. Yeah,
the other hand was Velcroed.
It was Velcroed to the other. Yeah, you know, so that, like Mark said, they were educated people, but sometimes not that smart. So then she decided to go back to skiing because she loved to ski. She broke her good arm. And good old Dad had to do everything for her, and I mean everything. She continued to participate in the hilltop rehabilitation activities, one of which was to go whitewater rafting. She got so cold and tired that she had to be carried out of the river and back up to the vans. Gardening was her passion, and she participated in extreme gardening. During one of those gardening sessions, she fell and broke her neck. This injury, a fracture to C2 and C3, is often a fatal injury. Not Mary Dawn. They fused her vertebra and she was right back at it in a couple of months. As for keeping her mind fit, she did the following. She memorized all the state capitals. She memorized all the U.S. presidents. She did celebrity ciphers. She did Sudokus. She did crossword puzzles. And just last week, when we were cleaning out some of her items, we learned that she also memorized the names of all the president's wives. We're pretty sure that she memorized those first because women are more important. Dad was quite the letter writer. The Ford Company probably has a library of Jim Carstens letters. He bought a lemon of a Ford pickup when he moved to Palisade, and he wrote many letters regarding his dissatisfaction with the pickup, as well as the customer service of the local dealers. And Danny, I hope Trevor didn't experience the problems that Dad had with that pickup, because Trevor Taylor purchased that from Dad. He loved to receive letters from friends and family. He always promptly wrote back. He especially loved getting letters from his niece, Jordan Slack Florick. We found a card from Jordan just recently, and that will be going with them. More about that later. I don't know of many married men who would write letters to their mother-in-law while they traveled around, but we found 38 handwritten letters from Dad to Grandma Slack. That's pretty special. As for the going with them comment, while we were cleaning out the house, as Mark mentioned, we found a lot of love letters. We also found a lot of things that we didn't really want to take with us, like diplomas and report cards with D's on them and things like that. So at the graveside service, it'll be tomorrow at 2 o'clock in Meeker. All of those mementos will be going with Mom and Dad. And that box is much larger than the box we have here today. Some of these items include, I already mentioned some of them, diplomas, many, many love letters, poems, newspaper clippings, photos, including a picture of Fritzy, Pomeranian ashes. We wanted to cremate Fritz, but his current owner would not oblige. Where are you?
Where's she?
Okay, Sal.
She's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know.
No. Thank goodness Sally has Fritzy. We are thankful that Sally has Fritzy. Mom and Dad were a fine pair. Mom was a person of many words. Dad loved numbers. In her later years, Mom did the ciphers in the newspapers whenever she had some downtime. And Dad could tell you how many stairs there were in the house, how much a gallon of milk or gas cost. Mom was very unconventional, and Dad was a bit more traditional, but they were always recalibrating to one another. Dad checked on Mom every night before he went to bed with a "Heidi, Heidi, ho."
Hello.
She answered just that way. And that meant that all was good and Dad could go to bed while Mom stayed up and read her books and tootled around the house. Together they were able to tackle all their challenges. Mom used to say, "If you weren't already married, I would just marry the hell out of you." So now they're together. And Chase is going to tell a story, a Graham story, that he promised his Grams he wouldn't tell.
So one time we went, she was out gardening, and I went to go check on her, like we all know she doesn't like. And so I went out to go check on her. She asked if I was doing anything net right now, and I told her no. So we went to City Market to go look at flowers, which is nothing new with Grams. So we were going in the parking lot, and we just did a drive-by. We didn't stop or get anything. But we were coming out of the parking lot, and this old brown Ford truck was trying to pull out, and Grams was driving by to go out. Well, Grams laid on her horn, and then the lady stopped, Grams stopped, and Grams threw her car in park, got out of the car, and started getting in this big old frenzy with this lady's. So I'm sitting here on the side with the pen in my hand, writing every detail of this lady's car on my arm, just in case it went south. And so the lady calls the cops, gets in a dispute with them, tells the officer that you apparently shouldn't mess with Dawn because she saw this sticker on her spare tire.
Don't mess with Dawn.
Mess with Dawn.
And so, yeah, and that was the story that I was never supposed to tell.
Well, I'm not going to be nearly as lengthy as my sister. I'm just going to read a poem that we found that Mom had written to Dad on their 55th anniversary. But, you know, you start thinking of all these stories that we've told, and I think about things like my dad and his phone. My family and I have laughed because my dad was terrible with trying to run his phone, and every time we came down, we had to do phone lessons, and I taught him how to use Siri, and I had to write Siri's name on the fridge so that he could remember, what's that lady's name? And so that he liked mine because I have got one with, I guess he's got an Australian accent, and Dad's like, can you make mine sound like that? And but my father mastered faces, is what Mom and Dad called them, selfies. And we have, every time I came down to help him with his phone, I would open the pictures, and there were hundreds of pictures of my dad's face. Because he would squeeze the buttons at the same time, and it would click, 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 click. So all these pictures of Dad's face. Why, Mom and I actually, when I was teaching her how to do faces, we were in a gym, imagine that, watching basketball games. So I taught her how to do faces with her phone. But
She was a better learner.
she was a better learner, and she didn't get frustrated. She was much more patient than Dad. Dad was notorious for like slapping his phone, and yeah, a little bit of a temper if you didn't know that. But Mom definitely had a way with words. I think of the times that we traveled to sporting events and I had some of my kids in the car. Mom would tell windjammers the entire way there and back. And her stories were mesmerizing. I don't know how she could think on the fly and articulate all. Some of the stories were just incredible. I think of the time that they brought Keaton back from Indiana, and he, probably all 200 pounds of him, laid in my mom's lap from Indiana to Colorado, and she tickled his back the entire way, 2 days in a car. And she loved it. I mean, Keaton got a pretty good deal, too, on that whole thing. But she was the happiest when she was with her grandkids and her kids and her great-grandkids. So,
Yep.
okay.
Get her done.
Titled To My Sweetie. And Mom was great with limericks and rhymes, and I don't know how she did this,
Dad
but
is
she did.
not.
Dad was not.
We learned,
We
found
read some yesterday.
and Dad was not a poet.
No. So, To My Sweetie. Roses are red.
I know.
Roses are red, violets are blue. This is so trite, it simply won't do. I've known you so long, since I was about 2. That's when my daddy brought home my juicy fruit chew. You're my best friend, and I am yours too. When this all started, I haven't a clue. Our children are perfect. Our grandchildren too. Now we have added Pax to our crew. Our friends are many, and our problems are few. We've had lots of fun, but there's much left to do. The world is so different. Obviously, that's true. We will miss the old, but enjoy the new. We are also different. We've learned as we grew. Of course, the last part may be up for review. Your hair has turned silver, but your eyes are still blue, and after 55 years, I still love you.
Okay, good
All
job.
right, you too. You're up.
Please, go ahead.
Look at us. After all these years together, look at us. After all that we've been through, look at us. Still leaning on each other. If you want to see how true love should be, then just look at us. Look at you, still pretty as a picture. Look at me, still crazy over you. Look at us, still believing in forever. If you wanna see how true love should be, then just look at us. In 100 years from now, I know without a doubt, they'll all look back and wonder how we made it all work out. Chances are we'll go down in history. And when they want to see how true love should be, they'll just look at us. Chances are that we'll go down in history. When they want to see how true love should be, they'll just look at us. And when they want to see how true love should be, they'll just look at us.
Okay, now it's your turn. Anybody who would like to speak, this is your chance. If you would like to say something but just don't want to stand up and say it, there's paper and pens on your table, and we'll read those for you later on during the meal. So please, anybody with any recollections, remembrances? Yes.
I'm Nikki Hunn, and I have about 30 years worth of stories, but with all the talk about Fritzy, this is the one we're going to go to. You're very lucky you didn't cremate the dog. So Jim was in the store one day, and I had these puppies, and they had just lost, I think all of their palms had passed. And so I pull a puppy up, and I say, this is Dracula, because he had the funniest widow's peak. And I said, would you like him? And he absolutely took the dog, and that was the end of that. So this is an AKC Yorkie that I think probably weighs near 30 pounds, which is not normal. But he was very spoiled, and the Pomeranians were not little ones either. So as that first year passed, after he took Fritzy, he and Mary Dawn would come in the store and say, "You hate us, don't you?" And I'm like, what? They said, "This dog is the biggest terror on the planet." And I said, "Well, that dog is a puppy. And I don't like puppies, but eventually when they grow out of it, I promise you'll love him." And my God, he would bring Fritzy in to visit, and I would be like, "Whoa, he's put on another couple pounds," and okay, biggest Yorkie I've ever seen in my life. Well, by the end, he said, "I don't know why I ever had a Pomeranian. This is the most incredible personality of a dog I have ever had in our lives," and they were so in love with him. So thank you for not cremating him. He's not quite ready to join them, but one day he will.
Thank you. Others? Yes.
Jim and I grew up, well, we didn't grow up together, but we were small children in Meeker before my parents moved to Fruita when I was 4. But our fathers and some of the other men in Meeker used to get together and play pinochle. And of course, some of the words were not the best in the whole world. And so my dad had made a garden for himself, and he let me make a little garden beside his garden and gave me the little packages so we could tell what they were. And one day he walked out of the house, and he was mad because he had lost the pinochle game. Anyway, he walked right through my garden. And I said, "You bastard, get out of my garden." And my dad grabbed me by the wrist and was going to paddle me. And my mother came out the back door and she said, "Jack Arnold, don't you touch her. Where do you think she learned that word?"
Good one. Who else? Yes. I'm going to go over here first.
My name is Alan Workman. I came into the name or cross paths with Jim Carstens when I was about 10 years. He's 10 years my senior, so we assembled together then in 1969 when I took my first job at Mesa Junior College, Colorado Mesa State, and fell in love with Jim Carstens because he was a competitor, and I guess my background brought me forth as a competitor. He tried playing left hand against me a few times when we first took on the racquetball, but he soon had to switch back to his right hand. Yet he would always win 21-20, 21-16, or he could really beat me up too. And he said, "Well, I beat you with my left hand." And I thought, by golly, he did beat me up with his left hand. Our volleyball games together were very, very close, but the real memories were together in the out of doors, up in on the White River at their cabin up there, up in the Upper Serendipity Park, chasing elk in 2-3 feet of snow. We had such a good time together. I have some pictures here that I want to give to Stacy and Dave that are quite revealing on some of our escapades. But I fell in love with Jim in the out of doors with the Clark's mules. What wonderful animals. If we hadn't had those mules to get the elk out, I'd still be up there. Jim Carstens truly could not find his way out of a box after dark. His driving skills were fast, so I figured before dark he could get to my house out in Deer Park at the far end of the Redlands. He wandered up and down the interstate between Fruita and Highway 340, back and forth, and I had him on the phone. I told him to stop, I'll come there. I will come get you. Well, I journeyed out, found him going home. He said, the T-Bird is heated up so badly, driving back and forth out here, I'll never make it home before dawn or dark, and Mary Dawn's going to be worried about you. I said, when did she ever start worrying about you? You're a man of your own ways. Both Mary Dawn and Jim were close friends. We're going to miss them dearly, but such wonderful people and such a wonderful family. And the poker games we're really going to miss. You know, the Annies, check, dealer, check, and Jim had just popped right off. Check, you get your checks at the bank, and he'd double the ante immediately. So you either stayed in, and he would usually win those hands because he knew what he had. A great guy, great family, and what a wonderful occasion.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Richard Rupp, he was talking about Jim going up and down the interstate. Well, must have been one of them runs. He'd call me, the T-Bird has quit, I'm here. So I'd go catch him on the interstate and get him back home, or it'd vapor lock. I don't know how many times I had to explain the physics of alcohol fuel and old cars and carburation. In the summertime, they just don't work well. But anyway, a lot of people don't understand that. But one of the things, Jim would come up to my shop. He'd sit there in a chair because he was tired of walking from the house, and he'd sit and we'd yak. He'd tell his jokes and stories. But one thing he said here not too long ago, I wished I'd have had more daughters and I had more grandkids. He kind of told me the story that he didn't want to have children. That's what he told me. I don't know if that's true, but Mary Dawn kind of got him into where he had to have kids, or he had kids, but he didn't know it yet. And he wishes he'd have had more kids and grandkids. He did tell me that. Thank you.
Others? Thank you.
I'm going to have to tell a couple of car stories because that's what they were all about too. I'm Kate. I'm Jim's cousin, and there was quite an age difference between us, and we lived in Grand Junction, my family, when we were little for a few years, and he would come and take me to kindergarten in a red Pontiac, I think it was a Pontiac convertible, and I just thought I was the hottest shit. I mean, I just thought, we'd pull up to that kindergarten, and it was just like, yeah, I'm the coolest kid there. And then we moved to Carbondale, and they would come up and visit us all the time, and of course they loved to ski. So one time, I remember my sister, she's here somewhere, but Mary Dawn picked us up in the Thunderbird, and we were going to meet Jim in Aspen. And we just get to right where Snowmass is, and there's Shale Bluff, like a total canyon, big drop. And that T-Bird did a 360 right there in the road. And we're just like shaking like crazy and like, well, let's go home. And Mary Dawn goes, and we're not going home, we're going skiing. And that's what we did.
Thanks. What about the class of 78 over here? Any Mrs. Carson stories? No? Others? Well, I can actually, and I have to tell you that one of the most pivotal people in my life was Mrs. Carstens. In 1978, she recommended me for a trip overseas, and I'd never been anywhere, and I found myself in Japan as an exchange student, thanks to her, in the company of a young woman who would then become my wife. And here we are 43 years later. So if it weren't for her, That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Anybody else?
Does anybody remember when he dropped the chainsaw on the Thunderbird?
Ouch. You can stay seated, that's okay.
I'm Tom Graves. Jim was going to teach me how to ride a motorcycle. So I went out and bought a motorcycle, and we went over to Manny Heights where he'd been living for some time. And he took off up one of those hills and made it to the top. I thought, well, hell, I can do that. And I revved up my motorcycle and charged up the hill and got about halfway up, and didn't have enough motor in my motorcycle to make it to the top. He didn't tell me how to get back down. So I sort of did a tumbling exercise. I'll always appreciate Jim's motorcycle ability. He was good.
Thanks. Yes.
I'm Charlene Higginson, and I was kind of a shirt-tail relation to Mary Dawn. She was my English teacher, actually, in high school, but I graduated a little bit before you guys did. But one Sunday, not too many years ago, I was coming home from church and going down the highway, and it was about next to the cemetery. And I come up behind this little red car. Wasn't his T-Bird red? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. One of them? Okay. Well, and he was doing about, between 35 and 40. And it's 50 through there, sort of. Depends on who's driving. But I followed him, and there wasn't any traffic anywhere. Nobody behind me and nobody coming towards us. So flipped on my blinker and started to go around him. And got up next to him, and I figured out who it was. So I rolled my window down, and I waved at him. And the race was on. But I backed off. I let him win because I knew I'd probably never hear the end of it.
We'll do a few more, and then we'll pick this up afterwards during the meal. So we don't want to make you stay hungry for too long. Stacy?
I want to tell a motorcycle story. Earlier, there was a little comment about the scars on the hillside out on the desert. There were several times that I would ride with Dad. I'd get on the back of his motorcycle and we'd go down I-70. And I always knew I was in trouble when we'd be zipping along, and then he would down gear. And then he would peel off of the interstate and climb a hill, like right there. And I don't know how many, and I'd have my flip-flops on and, shorts, and I don't even know how he knew where to go and how to get back down. Tom, he was not very good. He knew how to get back down, but nobody else did. Anyway, so the scars on the hills, you'll see them along I-70. Those are from Dad down gearing and climbing while we're going down the road.
We could probably talk about my dad driving fast all day, but we always assume it was Poppy. I was down in town at some educational thing, and I was hurrying back to Paonia because we had a playoff game. And I'm driving along about Whitewater, and here goes this little black Honda zipping past me. It was my mother. And I'm like, okay, Grams. So I kicked in behind her going about 75, and she was still pulling away. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just see her when we get to the gym. But I'm thinking, she shouldn't be driving 75, especially with one hand. Oh, yeah, she got a ticket coming out on the way back one day in Delta, going through Delta too fast, and she got ticketed, and she told the patrolman that she speeds all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Jim Squirrel, and I worked with Jim Carstens at Mason College, and he was head of the business department, and I worked in the business department. But what I want to talk about is his handball playing. And we all know that Jim Carstens had a hell of a sense of humor. And he'd go over to the handball courts, and these young studs were playing handball, and he'd go in there and he'd try to get a game. And finally one of them said, I'll play him. And so Carstens would go in there, and he'd be limping along, and then his neck would hurt him, and then his arm would hurt him, and kid would say, "You sure you want to play?" And Jim says, yeah, I'll play you one game. And the kid would say, okay. But Carson would say, I'm in such bad shape that you need to spot me some points. Well, the kid would say, how many points do you want? And Jim would say, 8 or 10. And so the kid said, sure, you can have 8 or 10. And then Jim would say, how about letting me serve first? The kid never had a chance to serve again.
Good thing he didn't have boys. I don't know how any of us would have turned out. Others. This is how we help keep people alive, right? Tell their stories, remember them, the things that they did that impacted you. Those kinds of things can live on and on and on. And many of us are from families that have stories that we wish would not live on and on and on, but they do. So if you have other things you'd like to share, write them down. We'll read them during the meal later on, or you can get up then and speak. Thanks everybody for your comments there. Sit back and relax, and we'll have another song.
Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the flowers are dying. 'Tis you, 'tis you. you'll not fail to tell me that you love me. I'll simply sleep in peace until you come soon.
Thank you. So the family's prepared for you a slideshow. I think if you can get a glimpse of one of the screens, are we good to go?
I remember Daddy's hands folded silently in prayer and reaching out to hold me when I had a nightmare. You could read quite a story in the calluses and lines. Years and work and worry had left their mark behind. I remember Daddy's hands, how they held my mom tight and patted my back for something done right. There were things about the man, loved about the man, but I'll always remember the love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's
Thank you, Paris. Beautiful. So on behalf of Stacy, Chris, and all the family, thank you so much for joining them here today. You're now invited to continue the party, and that's what it's going to turn into at this point with a meal. And as I said, you're going to also have a chance to speak again if you're so inclined and tell more stories. The poet Robert Frost famously said, in 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. Now, whether or not that's true, we can't know for sure, but if these kinds of things were a matter of certainty, what need would there be for faith? What I do know is, however your faith and beliefs may guide your life, you can keep Jim and Don's spirits close at hand by talking about them, telling their stories, remembering all the many ways they helped shape your life. Mrs. Carstens surely shaped mine. And just one more thing, Stacy and Chris said, Mom and Dad did like a party, so okay, you're going to have to help me make that happen. It's just a shame that we don't have some of Jim's plum wine from the summer of 1977 here. Luann Johnson, you're going to have to ask your sister Sue Ellen about that. But that's another story. Tomorrow, as Stacy said, we're going to inter the ashes in Meeker, and this will be part of that service. We're going to close out with the poet Edward Abbey's Benedicto. I think it's a fitting verbal image of the kind of life that I imagine them stepping into. May your trails be crooked, winding, lonesome, dangerous, leading to the most amazing view. May your mountains rise into and above the clouds, and may your rivers flow without end, meandering through pastoral valleys, tinkling with bells, past temples and castles and poets' towers into a dark primeval forest where tigers belch and monkeys howl, through miasmal and mysterious swamps, and down into a desert of red rock, blue mesas, domes and pinnacles, and grottos of endless stone, and down again into a deep, vast, ancient, unknown chasm, where bars of sunlight blaze on profiled cliffs, where deer walk across the white sand beaches, where storms come and go as lightning clangs upon the high crags, where something strange and more beautiful and more full of wonder than your deepest dreams waits for you, beyond that next turning of the canyon walls. Again, thank you for being here. Go have fun.